Okay. So, like I said, today we are working on writing a ratio as a percent. So we're moving right along with our percentage topics, kind of taking care of those little by little, adding an extra layer on as we go. Essentially, what we're doing when we're writing a ratio as a percent, we're applying percentages now to some real life examples. All right. So we're going to be able to take a fraction of some example that we're given, and be able to kind of convert that proportion and make that a fraction and convert that to a percent, just like we've done before. So we've dealt with just being given the numbers. Now we're going to actually apply it to a real life situation. Okay. So why don't you take a second, if you need to, kind of just follow along and write down this particular example. It says Joe spent $11 at the grocery store. Okay. Spent $11. He walked in with $25 total. And what we want to do is find the percentage of the total money he spent based off of the amount that he walked in with. Okay. So we're going to create a ratio to help us do so. Right? We're going to take this situation, we'll take the numbers that they do give us, all the information, and we're going to apply that to some things that we've learned before, whether it was using a ratio, whether it was kind of converting denominators to get to 100 and being able to find a percent that way. Whatever is easiest for us to do. All right. And I'll kind of show it both ways so we're all on the same page. All right. But the first situation, Joe spent $11 at the grocery store. He walked in with 25. How much of his total money did he spend? Remember that when we're dealing with percentages, we're dealing with fractions. So when I'm starting a problem like this, and I'll kind of go through the first example on my own, we'll do the second one a little bit more together. When I'm going through this, I need to think about, well, if he spent $11 out of his total of 25, I can set up a fraction that relates to this situation. So 11 over 25, we want to make that a percentage. Everybody with me so far? Now, there's two ways that we can go about this. The first way is something that we've seen before. How do I make, or what do I know all of my percentages are out of? What's the denominator? What's that? 100. So I can ask myself, well, how do I get from 25 to 100? What do I have to multiply that by? What do I have to multiply 25 by to get to 100? 4. And remember that I could do that in both my numerator and denominator. So this is something that we saw before the break. What's 11 times 4? 44. Remember that rule with the 11s, like 11 times 8 is 88, times 5 is 55, repeats. 25 times 4 is 100. Well, then 44 over 100 means that I have 44%. So when we're being asked, well, what's the percentage or how much of his total money that he used versus how much he walked in with? Well, we would say that if he spent $11 out of the 25, he spent 44% of the total money he had. Okay. So like I said, taking percentages and now relating them to some real world problems. And this would be our answer. Any questions about that first example? We might not always be dealt with a denominator that's easy to multiply a number by to get to 100, though. All right. It might not always be like the 5, 10, 25, 20, or 50 that we've seen, right? Where we can easily multiply it by 2, multiply it by 4, like we saw here. Sometimes we're going to be given a different denominator, in which case we have to use a different strategy. And this is where that ratio idea comes in, right? We have to set up a proportion to help us solve. We're still going to use 11 over 25. Okay. But the proportion we'll set up is, well, 11 over 25, that is equal to what number out of 100? So now we're dealing with a little bit more of an algebraic equation here to help us solve. And we've seen ratios and proportions before a couple of weeks ago when we just started talking about that. And in order to solve this, what we need to do is what's called cross multiplying. Remember doing cross multiplying? And we take the denominator of one fraction, multiply it by the numerator of another, and vice versa. Okay. So what I can do here to solve, so I can have an easier equation, because I don't want to deal with fractions, right? I can multiply 100 by 11. And then the 25 by the x and set up a new equation. 25 times x just gives me 25x. Maybe they have a calculator or Desmos at their disposal. Anybody do the other multiplication for me? What's 100 times 11? And just as a heads up, you will probably need a calculator at some point today for this. 1,100. So I'll say 25 times x, my one cross multiplication, is equal to 100 times 11, or 1,100. I need to get x by itself. Queen, what do I have to do on both sides? Divide by 25. Good. Notice that I'm multiplying these two numbers together. Well, to undo multiplication, I do the opposite, which is division. So I'll divide both sides by 25. And what's 1,100 divided by 25? 44. Notice that that is the same answer I got before when I was able to just multiply through by the denominator. The reason I'm showing both ways is because, like I said, you might not always get a nice even denominator where you can multiply to get to 100. Maybe you were dealt with, it's out of $27. Well, off the top of even my head, I don't know what 100 divided by 27 is going to give me, or what I have to multiply 27 by to get to 100. So I'm going to have to set up a proportion and do it this way. Okay. Any questions about that first example? Everybody good? All right. Let's take a look at the second example. It says Karen has completed 18 deliveries this week. She needs to make 40 for the week. What percentage of total deliveries has she completed? What would I do to set up maybe my first fraction? So it says she completed 18 out of 40 deliveries. What would my fraction be for my original ratio here? $18 over 40, good. So I'll have 18 divided by 40. Well, this is a situation where I might not know exactly what I need to multiply 40 by to get to 100, right? It might not be a nice even number. It could be a decimal, right? Something that might not be easy to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my proportion again. You're always going to set it equal to something out of 100 because that's what we're dealing with when we're talking about percentages, right? They're always out of 100. So I'll set 18 over 40 equal to x over 100. And now I'm going to carry on with my similar steps from above. What do I have to do from this point? What's that method called? Cross multiplying. So what two numbers am I multiplying together? 18 and 100. And then what else? 40 and x. Good. Well, this becomes 40 times x, which is just 40x. Using a calculator, or if you're good with some mental math, what's 18 times 100? What's that? 1,800. How do I get x by itself? Well, divide by 40 on both sides. Good. And what's 1,800 divided by 40? again, as a heads up, you're probably going to need to use a calculator or Desmos or some kind of calculator app. 1,800 divided by 40. Let's get somebody different. Anybody? 45. And that's my percentage. So the total delivery she's made, 18 out of 40, or 45% of those deliveries. A good way for you to kind of check your answer, make sure that you kind of estimate and rationalize what's going on here. 20 out of 40 is 1/2, right? And 1/2 is what percent? What's that? If you get half the points on a test, what's your percentage? 50. Well, she's a little under 20 out of 40. She's at 18, so your percentage should be a little under 50, right? Something that you can think about to kind of check and make sure you're on the right track. Another thing that you can do with this, if you wanted to, instead of setting up the proportion, since you have a calculator, if you did 18 divided by 40 on a calculator, you would get 0.45 as a decimal, right? If you were to type that in, that would be what you would get as a decimal. Remember that a way for us, this is going back to a week or two before the break, a way for us to convert from a decimal to a percent is to just move our decimal point 2 places to the right. Remember, tens, hundredths, everything's out of 100, so we move it 2 decimal places to the right. We'll notice that we have 45, which is exactly what I found before when I set up my ratio. So there's really 3 ways that you can go about every single one of these problems. You can either divide through, move the decimal, you can set up a ratio and a proportion, or you can set up a division problem and then multiply through to get 100 as your denominator. All right, so pretty much pick your poison with what you want to use and just kind of roll with that. Whatever's easiest for you, whatever's going to allow you to get the proper answer. All right. Any questions about anything that we covered today where we convert a ratio to a percentage? Everybody good? Okay.